Hello my friends, my name is Wes, and in today's video we are going to talk about how to deal with the holidays and how to deal with family. Maybe you're in the boat where it seems like you've done a lot of work on yourself over time, and maybe you have grown as a person and you feel totally different than how you were when you were a child or an adolescent at home. However, it seems like every time you go home, that totally reverses. You start to regress back into that childlike version of yourself, that same version of yourself that you were when you were in high school. You start to be more reactive to things, your parents say stuff that triggers you start to get into fights with your siblings, and that's not how you want to be acting. Well, the same thing happens for me, the same thing happens for most of us, and that's mostly because our behavioral patterning happens in a really strong way when we are children and adolescents. Our brains are still developing, and so a lot of the things that become our personality traits that eventually sometimes we want to alter or change to make ourselves into better people are really cemented when we are young. And the problem with that is that our environments dictate a lot of our emotional and behavioral reactions to things, or at least the immediate versions of them. So when we go home, we're put right back in that environment, and immediately those thoughts and feelings that were way back in the back of our mind that we've been trying to work on changing, those neural links that have been built up over time, immediately start firing again. They come back and you are forced back into that same behavior pattern. Now, that doesn't mean that this is without hope. There are plenty of things that you can do to start changing those behavior patterns over time. Let's dive into exactly what those are. Before we do, if you're new here, I am a psychotherapist in training, and on this channel we discuss mental health and relationships and how to improve both over time. So if you're new here, thank you so much for joining, and I really would appreciate it if you hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to my channel. It really helps out a ton. Okay, so how do you change these patterns when you're going into a very difficult time with your family? Step one is to prepare. So how do we go about preparing for these difficult situations? Well, the first way is by thinking about what are the triggers that are going to hit me when I go home. Now, I was dealing with a client who struggled with eating disorders. The issues that they faced were around these behavioral patterns that have been built up from their mother. Their mother used to comment on the things that they ate all the time, and so because of that, they started to become really cognizant of their body, and they started to have a lot of shame around eating, and eventually this turned into an eating habit. So when that person goes home for the holidays, a lot of this shame and complex emotion comes back up. So knowing those triggers going in can be really helpful. Knowing that your mother might say something that might trigger you, understanding what that might be and how to face it is going to be really important as a first step. So that's that kind of mindful awareness, being aware of the things that might happen to you and then beginning to change them because of that awareness. Step two is to cognitively reframe the things that you might hear. So triggers could be around eating, they could be around your work, it could be around so many different things, but think about where that is coming from and what the why is behind that. So think about the triggers that may come from your parents or other family members, and think about the why behind them. For example, going back to the person who struggles with body image, maybe the why behind that person's mother's comment is because that person's mom is insecure herself and she's projecting that onto their child. Maybe it's coming from a place of concern. They legitimately want their child to have a good life and to be happy, and to them that's equated with a certain type of body image. Now that's not correct, but you can begin to see how you might develop a little bit more compassion towards that other person because you understand the why of where their triggers are coming from. And developing compassion for that other person is a great starting place to being able to respond in a loving and kind way with harder boundaries. Then number three is to actually set your intention going into the event. So setting intention comes down to emotion and behavior. So think about the emotion that you want to feel around these people. Maybe it's happiness, maybe it's just a sense of contentment and calm. Whatever it is, think about that emotion and then think about the behaviors that would have to be attached to that emotion for you to show that emotion in the world. So say I was following you around with a camera, what would you be doing if you felt happy in that moment? What would you be doing if you felt safe and secure, right? So think about those behaviors and write those behaviors down. Maybe those behaviors are putting up boundaries, saying I'm only going to engage with my family for this amount of time, and the rest of the amount of time I'm going to go do something for me, self-care wise. I'm going to go on a run, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to do some breathing exercises, whatever it is. So think about what those behaviors are and write those down next to those triggers and next to the intention that you wrote down as well. But the next thing is in the moment. We've prepared for these situations. Now, how do we address them in the moment? We get in there, we feel these triggers coming up, we feel all of the same emotions and reactions coming up that we used to have as adolescents or as children. What do? Well, the next thing that we do is we try to be mindful. Mindfulness is always the key to developing an awareness of what our reactions are are, what these triggers are, and then being able to mindfully respond in a different way than what we are kind of programmed to do. So develop mindfulness. And one really helpful way to do this is to just set reminders on your phone. It can be really annoying when it pops up continuously, but every 30 minutes, every hour, whatever it is, give yourself a reminder to just check in. Check in, see how you're doing. Think about, oh, am I doing the behaviors that I said I wanted to do? Am I really responding to these triggers in the way that I wanted to? Am I setting hard boundaries with my parents or other people around me? And if not, then you can begin to change those things in the ways that we set out before. So set that reminder to be mindful, check in with yourself. And when you check in, I think it's good to think about the thoughts that you're thinking and also how your body is feeling. Sometimes when we are feeling a certain way around our parents or other people, we may start to literally respond in our body. We might get smaller and hunch over. Our voice might go lower. We might start avoiding certain situations. And so being able to check in and see exactly kind of what I'm responding to and in what way, both cognitively and in your body, can be really, really helpful to identify what parts of that you need to change. Next thing that I recommend that you do in the moment is to take timeouts. Whenever you are feeling overwhelmed, whenever you're feeling triggered, if you need to step out, you should. Make time for yourself to, if you're in the middle of dinner, get up from the table, go to the bathroom, check in with yourself there, do some breathing, calm yourself down, and make an effort to walk away from the situation before you start to respond in that negative way. And that gets into the third step, which is practice emotional regulation. Emotional regulation basically just means calming yourself down in the moment. So calming yourself down in the moment can look like a lot of things, but I think that a really helpful thing to do is a grounding exercise. A grounding exercise simply brings you back to the present moment, and this is really helpful when you're having racing thoughts, when you are getting really agitated, when you feel angry, all of these different things where emotion is kind of building up in you and it's overwhelming you and causing you to behave in ways that are not in line with the way that you want to be behaving. So a good grounding exercise to do is simply going into the bathroom or going into your room, wherever you can, just get away for just a second. And in that moment, take a second to do 3 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, and you can do more if you need to, but the next thing that I want you to do is just try to feel something. So ice can be really helpful here. If you grab some ice and you hold it in your hand, it really kind of helps change your physiological state and calm you down because it starts to get you pulled back into the present moment. You can do this with anything. You can go up to your bed and put your hands on the bed and feel the texture of the sheets and feel the warmth of the fabric. You can also just do that while you're sitting down and feel your hands on your pants, feel kind of the weight of your body in the chair. All of these are ways to kind of ground back to the present moment, be mindful of the area that you're in, and combined with that breathing, it begins to help slow your body down, pull you out of those anxious thoughts, and back into a place where you can actually respond with purpose. So the very last thing that I wanted to mention is after. We have preparing, we have in the moment, and then afterwards. Afterwards, all I want you to do is to sit down and do some reflecting. Think about, how did I do this time? And don't be judgmental of yourself, just try to be as objective as you can. Say, how did I respond? Did I do okay? Do I want to address this next time in a different way? Do I want to try to identify these triggers in a different way? And this can be really helpful to kind of break down with a partner or a friend, someone who is there and who has seen you in your new life, in your new way of being, but who can see you also when you retrogress back to this earlier version of yourself. Sometimes a sibling can be helpful with that too if you're around them a lot as an adult. So break that down, do some reflecting on your own, and then do some reflecting with that other person to really look for areas that you might be able to change or adjust next time you're in that situation. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much, and good luck for anybody who's out there in the holidays engaging with family members, friends, etc. from a past life who might be triggering and trying to pull you back. Remember, this is an exercise that you will work on again and again and again, and one of the reasons that this is so hard is that we often don't see our family members except for a few times a year, especially if you live in another place like I do. And so it can be really hard to do this again and again and again, but I really want to encourage you to have some self-compassion. Remember that everything is a work in progress and everything can change over time. So with a little bit of practice, you can too. Thank you so much. And again, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with somebody else who might find it useful, and please subscribe to my channel. It really helps out, and I would love to keep producing more videos for you and for other people. Thank you.